I had this uncle that had a city job, and he decided he wanted to be a farmer or something, so he bought this dairy farm in Maramarua. And he used to read me poets at night when I'd go and stay with him. You know, I'd get up at 5 a.m, do the whole milk the cows, come back, have your breakfast, go out, mend fences, and then at night time he'd read me poets like Yeats and Robert Burns and Shakespeare, and give me little glasses of whiskey with me, reading these poets. So that sort of somehow got into the psyche. Yeah. The poets I got into first were hip hop MCs and people like Dylan and Hendrix and Jim Morrison, or, you know, John Lydon from the Sex Pistols. You know, like they were records that you'd have a cool uncle or something that would turn you on to. Or, you know, I got into listening to student radio stations quite early and pick up a bit of stuff from there, and kids in your class would give you tapes and share sort of that. So, but yeah, I didn't really have a conventional road into poetry. I don't think, you know, I didn't read the canon in an order. I just sort of started finding poets that I was into, and then, you know, you read biographies about these poets and you find out who they were reading and so on. Yeah. Yeah, I worked on the Sky Tower when it was being built. I was flatting and like doing apprentice electrician work on that. Yeah, that was a different Auckland then as well. Like it was a bit more innocent or something. I don't know, like less tainted by capitalism or something. You know, like when a big casino, multinational casino, opens up, you know that there's a lot of other things that are going to come along with it. Yeah. Tower, 1996. A fine rain glazes the dark buildings on Federal and Wellesley streets. It's 6:15 a.m, a Thursday morning. 6 stories underground in the newly opened casino car park, the building site Broomhand sits in his black Falcon XR6 ute, bagging up grams with the tip of an ivory-handled hunting knife from a sandwich bag of white crystal. 6 stories beneath the wet, intersecting concrete footpaths, the silent glass storefronts and doorways, beneath the first high-heeled and brogued footsteps of office workers and commuters, sleepily stepping off the buses arriving from the outer suburbs, beneath the street sweepers spinning brushes, polishing curbs and gutters, the site Broomhand and speed dealer sits in his black Falcon XR6 ute, racking up finger-thick lines on a CD cover to kickstart the day. He has memorised every name on his tick list. He hoovers the lines. His pupils dilate. Ventricles thump in the bone house of his chest. All over his ulcerated gums he rubs the remnant powder, drains a warm can of DB bitter to rinse away the drug's caustic drip. 6 stories beneath the neon halls of gaming tables, roulette wheels and keno screens, epileptic corridors of beeping and flashing poker machines. Van loads of tradesmen arrive, carpenters, concreters, carpet layers, painters, plumbers and electricians. Those who work to stay high, and stay high to keep working queue beside the black Falcon XR6 ute, passing their handfuls of crumpled money through the open tinted window, past back packets of white crystal, before hauling aprons, extension ladders, lengths of pipe, drums of cable, compressors and steel toolboxes into the service lift that will carry them to the altitude of their day's labour, to the communication and observation decks of the incomplete tower, the tower they are being hurried to finish by barons and boardroom gangsters, the tower plunging now through soft rain and cloud high over the waking city. There you go. I'm really into sort of industrial landscapes. Like, you know, I love container yards, and I like panel beating shops, and I like, you know, motorway overpasses. those industrial monolithic sort of things are just as beautiful as the natural thing, eh? Okay, this is sort of connected to your last question. I like material that people think's not poetic, eh? You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of stuff that poets overlook, eh? Yeah. You know, yeah. It all matters, eh? And the poet that first knew that was Walt Whitman, eh? Like, he read Leaves of Grass, eh? Like, in that book, he sort of marries that wonder for everything, all of it together, eh? Yeah. I think when I was a kid, like, my father owned this sort of shitty panel beating shop, eh? Like, in a industrial area called Penrose, and I used to go there with him when I was quite young, eh? Like, to work, and he just had me there, and that was the world of men, eh? Like, they worked hard and, you know, smoked and drank beer after work, and you know, I'd see all the shit that happens in the world end up there, like car accidents, and, you know, you see this other side of the world, like the mechanics of the world, or the things that are holding the world together. And I think when I was that young, that was sort of where I found my sense of wonder, was in that, a lot of that stuff, eh? So yeah, and I sort of, when I started writing poetry, I disregarded that sort of thing, eh? I sort of thought, oh, fuck, who wants to read about, like, factories and all that sort of stuff, eh? People want to hear high-minded sort of, you know, philosophical things. And, like, the poems I wrote up to about 2010, you know, they were mostly like that, you know, sort of trying to be high-minded and sort of linguistic and spare and all this kind of stuff, even when they were addressing, you know, some sort of concrete reality. And I couldn't write anymore for a while, eh? And then, I don't know, I started reading poets who were closer to speech, eh? The way that they composed was sort of trying to mimic the rhythms of human speech, or had an openness or an intimacy or something, eh? And also I started reading poets that were kind of like, had worked in, you know, car manufacturing plants in Detroit in the, you know, 40s and 50s and you know, so I started thinking, okay, that material of my life is all right for poetry, you know. There is, yeah. So I don't know, I am a landscape poet in some sense, eh? But I don't think I'm a landscape writer in that I focus on just the natural world, eh? I sort of like the interplay of both of those things, eh? Yeah. Mm. Tic Dolerou is a condition called facial neuralgia, which is like nerve pain in the face. Sometimes people develop it after they've had strokes, and also, but it's a thing that, like, junkies used to fake to get painkillers. So when I lived in Christchurch, I used to buy, in New Zealand they have a thing called home bake, which is, you know, crudely manufactured heroin, basically. Like, it's not imported from overseas like it is in your country. But so this couple I was friends with, I'd go and buy it off. They lived in this little house, a cottage, just in the corner of a car park that was probably at one stage the caretaker for the local church, and this is right in the heart of Christchurch. And they lived in that little house, eh? And you just go over there, and the guy, like, he was a reader too. Like, he self-educated, like, he loved literature, right? But he's just a hopeless junkie, eh? And you know, he'd be reading these quite heavy books, and he'd go around and, like, he'd buy drugs and do it up there or whatever, and you chat to him, a cup of tea, and carry on in your day. But some of the happiest times in my life in Christchurch were when I'd go to his house with $100 in my pocket, and it'll be a nice sort of spring evening that was sort of a bit warm, and everyone was quite happy in the city. You felt, all right, cool. And you'd go there and you'd be able to like fucking have some drugs or something. But he just lived this simple life. It was strange, like he just sold home bake out of this house, and then I went back to Auckland for a bit, and then when I went back to Christchurch, I went back to that house to see if they were there, and some lady was like, "Go away, like don't ever come back here, they're long gone," or something. And then when I gave up those drugs, I was in a detox clinic and there was a woman in there who knew them, and they're separated, and he had become a shocking tranquilizer addict and alcoholic or something, and that was the end of 2003. And then every time I go back to Christchurch, like I think of that little house, and what I knew hundreds of people like them, but where are they now? They're like, who knows, they're gone, like since the earthquake happened. Yeah. So you sort of memorialise people like that in poems, and that Tic Dolaroo is a sort of shot at trying to memorialise one of those good days when I would go and visit that guy and buy his dope off him, mate. Yeah. Tic Dolaroo. Found him back there this morning on an upturned blue paint bucket, holding open a Picador paperback copy of Mailer's Ancient Evenings. Right index finger still hooked, still pointing to a line somewhere at the middle of page 370, where he was always by the front door of the 2-room cottage that once stood in the far corner of the Telstra car park at 239 Hereford Street, shaking his head slowly as he started to mumble, until the mumbling slowly became, "The baker hasn't been today, I'm still out of double, best to pop back later," which I'd heard enough times to know as the joke he told before each transaction, citing the corner of $100 packet folded up in glossy black paper in the left breast pocket of his denim shirt, with his wife still hovering behind the scene in the kitchenette like a kabuki ghost, nodding out over an endless book, with the right index finger still pointing towards the line he has just read and already forgotten, because it was a morning in early summer, because the southern sun had just licked away the last winter chill from his pale skin, sitting there on an upturned blue paint bucket beside the dahlias, the freesias, the lavender plants, dressed in rugby shorts and denim shirt, palming me the packet. He was smiling because the drug and the sun were inside him, singing together. There you go. Walking to Jutland Street and the Lifers both got, I was fortunate, they got really good critical attention from from quite difficult kind of reviewers, people who are not afraid to sort of trash someone in their book in a review, that kind of thing. But I got the sense that, like, with the Lifers, people were like, they wanted Walking to Jutland Street again or something, but it's not going to happen, like, I don't know, it was a weird thing, like, that's the thing about a second book, is like you put one thing out and people go, oh yeah, he's the poet that wrote that thing. But the Lifers is the concerns are a bit different, but they overlap to Jutland Street, and just as they all overlap into the next book of poems, if that ever happens, But yeah, I think also Walking to Jutland Street, it was kind of like three things happened. Like, I got Walking to Jutland Street accepted, a week later I turned 40, and then I think like another 2 weeks later my son was born. So there's 3 pretty significant kind of events all tied into one. You know, like it's all, whoa, that book and having a new son and that. The life is, I think it's a bit, what I'm concerned about as a poet now, maybe, I think I got that in the lifers. I did that, like I got that thing, so I'm happy about that, which is sort of a thing to do with the craft of the poems or something. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Epilogue. Whenuapai. All night, industrious rats have hollowed out macadamia nuts inside the walls and ceiling cavities. They have left us empty nutshells with neat clean holes bored in the tops. After an hour of stillness, things start to move again. Hot water rises in the copper pipes from the wetback. A bead of dew forms on the single leaf of the baby taro plant. Through the curtain, made from a piece of soft Indian silk, I watch the sun's rays clipping the tops of bamboo trees. You are moving too. The unwelcome thunder of a Hercules circling to land at the nearby Air Force Base won't break the tranquility as we move with a controlled intensity beneath the duvet. The day is here. I'm close to the brightness. Boof. There you go.